Welcome, everyone, to Buddhist Center. My name is Jeff Allen, and tonight, once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's Source of All My Good, Foundation of All Good Qualities. Very exciting anytime that we can enter into this text and try to extrapolate it a little bit and try and find out what's contained in this very, very short poem in each of the verses and see how they relate to our own spiritual path and how they relate to changing our minds. Because that's the name of the game around here, is trying to change our perspective, trying to change the way that we act and react to external circumstances, in relation to external circumstances, and that's not always easy to do. So it's nice to have the guidance of a text and of great lamas and a great lineage to show us exactly what will be necessary for us to do to actually transform our mind in a way that will always be transformed eventually. And it starts with the baby steps and the small practices that we can do that grow into eventually perfection. So we have the seed of perfection within us. We have Buddha nature. So we have this potential to become fully enlightened. And just like Buddha Shakyamuni did, we have to rely upon a path that will bring about that result. So without getting into any more detail, let's get into the 7-point Vairocana posture. A posture that's so conducive to making our mind clear, having our winds and channels and our blood flow in the best way possible. So when we're able to sit for longer periods of time with our minds, and we're able to hold our minds in meditation longer and longer, we won't have kind of physical hindrances. Our physical posture will actually be a support to our mind being able to sit for longer periods of time. So if we can kind of get this physical posture down, that's a little bit easier than getting our minds to the point where they could sit for 4 hours without moving off a focal object. But in order to do that, we need to have the support of our body, not to be a distraction. So let's get into the 7-point Vairocana posture. We've gotten into many, many times before, so I won't go through the details. Just make sure that your back is straight. It's a spine like a stack of coins, and then have the other 6 points that we've gone over so much. So we're going to begin breathing in and out and counting the breath. And then we're going to also be trying to visualize in front of us, about an arm length away, about the eye height, size of our thumb, Buddha Shakyamuni in a very static form, beautiful, radiant form. There's a picture of Buddha Shakyamuni right behind me with His Holiness the Dalai Lama right under it. For anyone not familiar with Buddha Shakyamuni's image, but you're going to visualize it right in front of you. And you're doing this with your mental consciousness. You're not trying to hallucinate it with your eye consciousness. You're trying to visualize Buddha Shakyamuni in this space in front of you with your mental consciousness, while focusing on the breathing in and out and the counting. So we have 4 focal objects now: breathing in, breathing out, counting, and Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation. And if what we're going to try to do is stay only on those focal objects, if we start to see our mind scattering or becoming excited or distracted, we're going to bring it back to the breathing in and out and the counting in Buddha Shakyamuni. If we start to see our mind kind of dull or sleepy, who's seeing that? Introspection. The spine in our mind is checking to see whether or not, is your mind scattering and excited, or is your mind dull and sleepy? And if any of those things are happening, we let the mindfulness, which is not forgetting the object, not forgetting the focal object, bring the focal objects that we determined we were telling our mind that we were only going to focus on. And in Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, when we get to the meditation session, it says that, now we're going to tell our minds exactly what to do. Our minds, we usually just are led around by thoughts and distraction and sleepiness and dullness, and we never really get a grip on our mind. We never really get an ability to stay focused for any period of time. It just kind of runs wild, as Shanti Davis says, like the crazed elephant in our mind. And when we do exercises like this, mental exercises like this, it allows us to become more competent at being able to focus on something. And if we do this every day over and over and over again, eventually we'll go through the 9 stages of shamatha and land on calm abiding, where we'll have this physical and mental pliancy that is coupled with this ability to focus single pointedly on an object as long as we really wish to focus on it. So That's what we're trying to practice here. Not that we, in a few seconds or in however long we do it, are going to be able to achieve, these 9 stages. But we have to first start somewhere. We have to start with, setting up what our focal objects will be, and then practicing with those focal objects, practicing for a minute, then making it 1.5 minutes, maybe, then making it 2 minutes, then making it 5 minutes. And you'll see, if you engage in this practice daily, more and more and more, you'll be able to be less distracted and be able to kind of hold on to these objects in a better way. And if you have another, front generation that you usually use, another deity or whatever you use, or you don't want to focus on front generation, you just want to breathe in and out and count, or you just want to breathe in and out, whatever it is, just make sure that you're telling your mind, this is what I'm going to do. And that you're making sure your mind's not forgetting that you told it this is what you're supposed to do. And it is, has a little spy watching to make sure that what you told your mind to do, it's doing. Okay, breathing in and out, counting, and Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation. We're so fortunate to have these teachings in our lives. So many beings don't. So many beings have no idea exactly how to get rid of suffering, how to achieve bliss. They don't have that roadmap, but we do. Rejoice in that fact. We're so fortunate. Buddha Shakyamuni was so kind to come into our world 2,600 years ago and present us with the truth of our situation. Presented us with the truth that we all have Buddha nature and that our mind can mature exactly as his mind did. Our mind is in the same nature, empty of intrinsic existence as the Buddha's mind is right now. And it's because of that emptiness of intrinsic existence, that lack of defiled nature, that we have this potential to become enlightened. We can remove the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience the same way that Buddha Shakyamuni did, by relying upon a path, because our mind isn't naturally sullied. The stains that are within it are adventitious. And when we engage in a path that removes them, they can be permanently gone. We're so fortunate that Buddha came and turned the wheel of Dharma 3 times. Came to Varanasi and taught the 4 Noble Truths and showed us exactly what suffering is. We have to become so convinced of the first Noble Truth. The Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of suffering. We have to identify exactly what that is. We won't be able to advance on the path if we don't identify exactly what the truth of suffering is. We must know what the 8 sufferings are, the 6 sufferings are, the 3 sufferings are. We must know what the suffering of change, and especially know what the pervasive compounded suffering is. This will go on and on and on, and we will have no control over the suffering that we have to experience. And the Buddha said that not having freedom is misery. So fortunate that we can identify exactly what sufferings we have. and know that they're impermanent, know that they're not static, know that they're caused. And the Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of origin and shows us exactly what causes all of our suffering. Shows us exactly what we have to abandon. What is it that we have to abandon? Self-grasping ignorance. Because it's from self-grasping ignorance that inappropriate attention occurs, and then the afflictions occur, and then contaminated karmas occur. And from the contaminated karmas, afflictions, and their seeds, we have suffering, we have cyclic existence. So because all sufferings arise from causes, and we identify the causes we need to abandon, we know that the third noble truth is possible, where the Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of cessation. How lucky are we that we're among the few that know exactly what we need to do, what we need to get rid of, what we need to abandon in order to achieve fearlessness, a freedom completely from the misery of cyclic existence. And the Buddha showed us exactly what to do by stating this is the superior truth of path, and stated that if we rely upon a path of wisdom that serves as an antidote to the origin of suffering, then we will never have to suffer again. We can have a sigh of relief knowing this. And it's not only us. All sentient beings have suffering. Like myself. When we start to think about the sufferings that sentient beings have, the suffering beings of the hell realms, so hot or so cold, or just so much torturous suffering. We think about the sufferings of the hungry ghost. They can't get anything that they want. All the things that they need to eat and drink are like mirages when they get to them. So much suffering. We think about the suffering of the animals. Animals in the ocean, animals looking on the ground, having to live outside without shelter, having to be in fear of being eaten by other animals, having to just be led around like a slave and then eventually led to slaughter. We think about all of these sufferings. We think about how all these beings relate to the 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings, and 3 sufferings. Think about all the human beings and how much their pain hurts, just like our pain hurts. How nice it is when they're happy, just like it's nice when we're happy. This just insatiability that we all have, all these human beings have. Not finding that the things that are contaminated within cyclic existence that seem like happiness are actually just forms of the suffering of change and will eventually be a self-destruct, will self-destruct and turn into the form of greatest suffering because they caused us so much happiness we thought before. That change will be so rough on our minds and on their minds. And we recognize that all sentient beings, all human beings have such forms of suffering. Think about the suffering of the demigods, the jealousy that they feel, yearning to just have the sensual pleasures and have all the wonderful places and wonderful things that the gods of the desire realm possess, but they can't have them. Think about the sufferings of the gods, having to eventually lose their status, having to eventually recognize that they're going to have to be in a lower realm of cyclic existence. And the fear that causes, the suffering that causes. Even beings in the form realm, some of them, even though they don't have the suffering of suffering, have the suffering of change and pervasive compounded suffering. And even those who don't in the form realm and those in the formless realm still have the pervasive compounded suffering and will eventually, even though at that moment they're so absorbed in samadhi, so absorbed in meditation, they'll have to be forced into another rebirth because only suppression has happened, not liberation. Just like ourselves, all of these beings have so much suffering. And even the beings in the higher grounds still have afflictive obstructions sometimes, still have obstructions to omniscience. And the target of the bodhisattva is to get rid of the obstructions to omniscience. And until that happens, they're still not satisfied. Recognize that all beings must remove the afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience if they want to have fearlessness and bliss, just like us. And the only way that we'll be able to achieve not only fearlessness, not only removal of the afflictive obstructions, but the obstructions to omniscience removal, the bliss that the Buddha has, the only way we can do that is by putting others' needs before our own. But we're so fortunate that we know this key to success because we've been taught so well by Khyentse Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and all those holy beings that have come into our lives. Rejoice in the fact that we have this opportunity. We have this human basis with the 8 leisures, undeniable causes and conditions that are so incredible that so many don't have. Now imagine that the static image of Buddha Shakyamuni turns into an animated image. So happy, smiling, so glad that we're here, engaging in practices that will cause us to have fearlessness, cause us to have bliss. Because this is all Buddha Shakyamuni came to this world to do, was to show us exactly how to achieve fearlessness and bliss. And we're doing it. We're fulfilling his wishes. Imagine now that Buddha Shakyamuni has been holding the entire merit field and as one being, as himself. And imagine that now the entire merit field explodes into the space in front of you. Imagining all the holy gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas now are in the space in front of you. Imagining Khyentse Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Demalocha Rinpoche. Imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu. Imagining Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrin, Umzala Geshe Aga. All of these incredibly holy beings, Jeffrey Hopkins and Thupten Chodron, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Imagining any of the beings that you consider holy in the space in front of you. Now imagine the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya, and Asanga and Vasubandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Gunaprabha and Shakyaprabha, Lama Salimpa, Atisha, imagining all these holy beings who taught us the grounds and paths and logic and ethics and so forth. We're so fortunate that these beings elucidated the Abhisamalamkara and elucidated the Vinaya teachings and elucidated the way for us to logically understand them. We're so fortunate. We're so connected to these beings. If we've read the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa, we're so connected to these beings. And so many of us spent a decade studying this text and this text alone with Khyentse Geshe Wandak. Rejoice in the fact that you're connected to all of these beings of the extensive deeds lineage. Now imagine the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Arya Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti and Buddha Palita and Arya Deva and Shanti Deva and Chandrashita and Baba Vega, Kamala Shila, imagining all of these holy beings. And again, thinking about Salimpa, who was so kind to pass down those 2 lineages of bodhicitta to Lord Atisha so that he could make it into one integrated path. We're so fortunate. Imagining Lord Atisha. Now imagine the beings of the lineage of blessings, the lineage of practice, passed down from Lord Vajradhara to Saraha and Machipa and Tilopa and Naropa and Lotsawa Marpa and Milarepa and Gampopa. That beautiful jeweled ornamental liberation text, the Lamrim text within the Kaju lineage. We're so fortunate to have had these beings come into our world and bless us with the truth, bless us with the understanding of the nature of the mind. Imagine Drone Tompa, Atisha's root disciple, who Atisha passed the entire Lamrim lineage to, and recognized that Drone Tompa was a lay person, a very special lay person, but a lay person. We all have so much potential. Imagining the three Kadampa lineages, imagining all of the holy beings of the Nyingma, Sakya, Kaju, and Galup order, beings like Sakya Pandita and Padmasambhava, and all of the Karmapas, imagining Lama Tsongkhapa and Kirtupje and Jelsupje and Basuchuji Jetson and Jayan Sheba and Janya Rupi Dorje. All these beings we've heard so much about from Kensur Geshe Wandak and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Goncha Jimmy Wampo, so kind to be able to elucidate the tenet systems in such a short garland. We're blessed. Imagine the deities of the highest yoga tantra, yogic tantra, performance tantra, and action tantra. So connected to those beings. His Holiness the Dalai Lama just gave the Chakrasambhara initiation for the whole world to see. So fortunate, the highest yoga tantra initiation. He's given so many Kala Chakra initiations, and the Haruka initiation he gave before. So connected to Chenrezi, 1,000 arm and forearm, so connected to Medicine Buddha, so connected to Manjushri, so connected to Aryatara. So fortunate. Imagine all of the 35 Buddhas who we know have such a power of basis to purify eons of our misdeeds when we just recite their names. All of the protector deities of the small scope, medium scope, great scope. Vaishravana, Dharmapala, Mahakala, Palden Lamo, the glorious, wrathful emanation of Tara, who Kensur Geshe Wandak said was our protector. Imagine all of these beings in the space in front of you. Now imagine, because you've recognized that all sentient beings like ourselves want happiness and the causes of happiness and want freedom from suffering and the causes of suffering, they have to do the same thing that we have to do in order to achieve fearlessness and bliss. And when we recognize that in order for us to achieve not only fearlessness, but bliss, in order for us to achieve remove the afflictive obstructions, the obstructions to omniscience, in order for us to become the most reliable guide in the universe, we must become a Buddha. But for now, we can act as if, we can imagine ourselves doing exactly what we will do when we become Buddhas. Imagine that we have infinite arms and we're so reliable, imagining that we grab all sentient beings and bring them here in order to hear these teachings, and that they're able to listen to them, that they don't have any of the faults of the three pots, imagining that they have just a perfect way to hear these teachings, just as the Arhats did when Buddha Shakyamuni turned the wheels of Dharma, and they had that special ability to memorize the teachings just as they were being given. Imagine that all of these beings of the hell-hungry ghost, animal, humans, demigods, and gods, any being who still has obstructions to omniscience is brought here and is able to hear exactly what they need to do to progress on the path to become fully enlightened beings, just as we want to become fully enlightened beings. Now imagine that all sentient beings are here, and now the merit field is so happy that all sentient beings are here. And imagine that we all recite together, "May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings." Make this our motivation. Make this the reason that we're here. to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Smaller motivations are not enough. Smaller motivations aren't what Khyentse Geshe Wanda taught us was the ultimate way to go about our spiritual progress. And we met with the Mahayana teachings, and it's so rare to meet with the Mahayana teachings. And we met with the Tantric teachings that are so rare that only a few of the 1,000 Buddhas that will come during this time, and there'll be more Buddhas the other Buddhas came before the 1,000 and will come after the 1,000. But Maitreya won't even come, who will be the next Buddha, until so long in the future. And Maitreya won't teach Tantrayana, but we've been exposed to Tantrayana because of the kindness of our Lama and because we are born in a time where these teachings are present. Rejoice in this fact. These aren't just words. This is the reality of our situation. We need to feel this very deeply, not just words. Now, we're all here. All sentient beings are here. Let's start to listen to the nectar of the Dharma, beginning with the 7th Dalai Lama's short poem called Severing the Ego, Meditations to Sever the Ego. And then we'll read the Heart Sutra after that. This is connected to the Heart Sutra. I think you'll get it once I go from this into the Heart Sutra. Meditations to Sever the Ego. Om Swasti. Homage to He beyond the gods, the all-kind master who is inseparable, one with Manjushri Vajra, Lama Tsongkhapa in tantric form, who nakedly showed the nature of the mind pure since the beginning. Dream objects in the mind of one drunk with sleep, the horses and elephants conjured up by a magician, only appearances on those foundations, nothing real, merely imputations. Similarly, all things in the world and beyond are simply projections of names and thoughts. Not even the tiniest atom exists by itself, independently and in its own right. Yet anything perceived by an ordinary being whose mind is clouded by the slumber of unknowing is taken as something ultimately true. Look how the samsaric mind works. That I seen by the deluded mind, that way things seem to exist on their own, is known by realized beings not to be. How important to check the mind that believes in it. If that called I actually exists and is not merely a label placed on the body and mind, I would not be related to my body and mind. They would be like Eastern and Western mountains. So profound. When one searches the I in terms of cause and effect and asks whether it is one with or other than the body and mind, the wisdom of emptiness, void as the sky, arises and melts the thought that grasps for ultimates. That wisdom is the perfect view, which joined with relentless mindfulness, the spy of introspection, and firm samadhi transports one to the peak of clear, blissful, non-conceptual meditation. Mind thus poised and repeatedly searching, one gains a diamond-hard understanding, a weapon of 100 unbreakable spikes, which undoubtedly will destroy the mountain of ego. During meditation, keep the mind unobstructed as space. After meditation, regard the flow of events as a rainbow. Thus, the things which so allure the world are seen to be insubstantial hallucinations. Joy and misery are dances within a dream. Forms and sights are a town projected by a magician. Sounds are like one's own voice echoed in a cave. Thus, who grasp at them are mindless children. Just as a reflected image distinctly appears when a man holds his face to a mirror, all things are both radiantly manifest and empty. For that very reason is cause and effect unfailing. Thus, by abandoning the negative and increasing the good, by keeping one's mind tethered with the three bonds, and by following a lifestyle unstained by even minor faults, Ultimate aims are quickly and easily attained. This body is a pot filled with blood, pus, and excrement. Possessions are like the honey collected by a bee. Friends and relatives are like strangers met in the marketplace. Prosperity and comfort are deceptive assassins. This mind, this life races towards death like a river pouring over a cliff. No one is sure to be alive, even this evening. When the grinning sun drops behind the mountains, engrossed in the dance of the 8 worldly dharmas, immature people lose sight of deeper values. Watching them thus flounder in delusion and fiction, the hearts of those like me retch and groan. If you wish to attain supreme, perfect enlightenment, meditate day and night upon the Bodhi mind. Merely engaging the body, speech, and mind in virtue will not bring your practice to the great way. Develop ever greater waves of enlightened thought and strive savagely to cross to the other shore of the infinite sea of bodhisattva deeds, just as taught in the sutras and tantras of Buddhas. May this song on meditation upon the perfect view be a dragon's roar to awaken living beings from the beginningless sleep of ignorance. May it help fulfill the endless needs of the world. Now I'll read the Heart Sutra in Tibetan. Papa Shereji Bharati Shimbi Nimbo Shudzo Jakagido Bhagavate Prajaparamita Randeya Begedo Jamdende Ma Shereji Bharati Shimbi Nimbo Bombo Jigo Digi Dagi Duba Judina Jamdendi Jabi Jago Pungi Rigi Lungi Gendun Temple Don Chanchi Sembi Gendun Temple Don Tachi Chuzi Dedi Itse Jamdende Samong Nama Jejawu Chichi Nanani Dingen Zila Nyomba Jozo Yandi Itse Chanchi Semba Semba Jembo Baba Genrezi Wanshi Shereji Bharati Shimba Samo Juba Nila Namba Danshin Bumong Abo Ditalaya Rajan She Doma Namba Dao Dene Sanji Jitu Zendamba Sharebu Shanju Zamba Zamba Jambo Baba Genrezi Wanshi Lati Kitchen Mezo Riji Bon Kalala Shereji Baro de Shimba Samo Juba Jeba Duba Deda Lava Jati Kitchen Mebadan Shanju Zamba Zamba Jambo Baba Genrezi Wanju Kitsi Dan Demba Sharada Di Ibula De Kitchen Mezo Sharebu Riji Bon Kalala Shereji Baro de Shimba Samo Juba Jeba Duba Deda Naba Daba Jade Bomong Abo Dita Janranjin She Doma Naba Yanda Baja Sudao Zu Dombao Dombani Zuzo Zule Dombani Shemayano Dombani Lejan Zu Shemayano Dejan Duzo Wadan Dushe Dan Naba Sheba Nandomba Sharebu Deta Judam Je Domani De Zeni Meba Maje Bamagaba Jema Meba Jema Jandawa Drama Meba Gama Meba Sharebu Deta Domani La Zume Zome Dushe Dushe Name Nama Jeva Me Mime Name Jeme Lume Ime Zume Drame Drime Rome Reja Me Jume Domiki Kame Bane Ichi Kame Ichi Naba Jebi Bada Yamedo Mariba Me Mariba Seba Meba Ne Gashi Me Gashi Sebi Bada Yamedo Tejan do Yawadan Gojuan Goba Dala Me Yajime Doba Me Madoba Yamedo Jarebo Dedawana Janju Zaman Nanoba Me Biji Jereji Baro de Shimbala Denji Nede Semla Jiba Majin Draba Medo Jinjilo de Jinjile Deni Nyanan Lede Bido Shindu Duzum no Namba Jube Sanje Damji Jang Jereji Baro de Shimbala Deni Lana Meba Yandaba Zobi Janju Nubongo Bozanje Zo Detawana Shereji Baradi Shiminga, Jiba Jembinga, Lana Mebinga, Menyabadan Yabinga, Dunya Jabju Rabju Sheva Shibinga, Mitsumbina, Demba Sheba Shade, Shereji Baradi Shimbinga, Mebateata, Gate Parasangati Buddhizo, Jrebu, Janju Zamba. Chembo de da Shereji Baro de Shimba Samola Baja, then they jumped and they did Dingenzi de Legende, Janju Zamba Jembo, Baba Genrezi, Wanjula, Lezo Jejo, Wajine, Lezo Rigi Bonde Dajan, no Rigi Bonde Dajan, they jutodi di Dambushan to Shereji Baro de Shimba Samola Baja de Tijan Jeba, Nanjan Yazu Yerango, jumped and they did Gatsi, Sedan Demba Sharada di Ibudan, Janju Zamba Jembo, Baba Genrezi, Wanjudan, Tamjedan, Tembe Dibi Kode Dada Lada Midan Lama Yedan Reza Jibi Jitin Yeran De Jom Den Deji Zombala Nyompa Do. Kala jube ni jo tamba ne ngu she du ju nga yi du du jen du ba ba la ma yi bu jin zi ni zon kan jo so la sha tse lo aga samada ter sandara samara ya be aga samara ter aga samara ter sandara samara ya be di ata on gate para sangati bodhiso a baba ko ju sanji gai de be do ji she lobo doji mebo doji shewa doji ragi baji me do be she dan ji she din gori so a gerin do ja ji jo shewa da me do nu be jen dan de wa da tumba jun jin bon zon jo ji da ji de jan den da de le jo. Now make a model offering, mandala offering, as a request for teaching. Imagine you're offering a perfect universe, beautiful, no issues in that perfect universe. And also, most importantly, imagine you're offering your practice. We know that Jitsun Milarepa didn't have anything, but he made the greatest offering in the world to his teacher, Marpa, and that was his practice, his pure guru devotion. So make sure that you offer not only this real nice fancy place, but offer your practice as well that is abiding in this nice fancy place, this beautiful mandala that you're making the offering of. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Radha Mandala Gam Niratayami. So now we'll do the refuge prayer. We'll do the refuge prayer. And when we recite the refuge prayer, I'm going to do it in English and in Tibetan. But when we do it in English, when you recite it, you say, through the merit I create by listening to the Dharma. You'll hear me say, the merit I create by teaching the Dharma. But we all have our roles, and we want to make sure that, we're stating what's going on at the time in the prayer. So if you hear me saying something different, it's just because I'm, going to be teaching and you are going to be listening. So let's dedicate the right thing to us becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Because this refuge prayer not only contains refuge, this is also a prayer that contains bodhicitta. It's called the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. So it's kind of an all-in-one, one bang for your buck, if to say. Okay. Here we go. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Zanje chedan zaje janan la janju badu dani jazuji dagi juje jibe zonanje drola benje zanje drubarjo Sanje chedan zaje janan la janju badu dani jazuji dagi juje jibe zonanje drola benje zanje drubarjo zanje chedan zaje janan la janju badu dani jazuji dagi juje jibe zonanje drola benje zanje drubarjo. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha, Gautama, I pay homage. The one who transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, and protector, to you, I make prostrations. Independent origination, there is no ceasing, no arising, no annihilation, no permanence, no coming, no going, no separateness, and no sameness. I prostrate to the consummate Buddha, the supreme among all teachers, the one who taught this peace, which is free from elaborations, the one who has eliminated the web of conceptualizations and is endowed with the divine bodies of the vast and profound, who eternally shines forth forever the noble light rays. To you, the Buddha, I make prostrations. All composite things are impermanent. All contaminated things are the nature of suffering. All phenomena are the nature of emptiness and selflessness. Transcending sorrow is peace. The Guru is the Buddha. The Guru is the Dharma. Likewise, the Guru is the Sangha. The Guru is the source of everything wholesome. I go for refuge to the Guru. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. And if you do not have the view, you do not have the liberating path. If you do not have the liberating path, it means you will have samsara, unfortunately. How's everybody doing? I hope you're all really well. Do we have Rinpoche's prayer? I'm going to do it at the end, but that'd be great. So I hope you're all well. Once again, so fortunate because of Khenser Geshe Wandak, who I just mentioned, that we are here together, because I wouldn't be here talking without everything that Rinpoche so kindly did for me. And, you know, you wouldn't necessarily be here, a lot of you, you know, because we wouldn't have connected and you wouldn't have found these teachings to be something that you would want to even hear necessarily. It was because of Rinpoche's skill and instruction and attention to detail and ability to teach the scope so well that we were all so inspired, and that, you know, some of us, you know, years later, a few years later, some of us 10 years later, some of us 20 years later. And now, you know, as I get older, I'm, you know, 27 years later, still interested. Whenever 95 was, 28 years later, I'm still interested in Buddhism. And I don't know, in the first couple of years before I met Khenser Geshe Wandak, if I had kept going in the fashion that I was going, like taking this and taking that, and taking a little here and taking a little there, I don't know if I would have been able to sustain my Dharma practice. And I don't know if I would have given up or not, but it was by seeing a holy Lama and by having a pure example of how to practice in front of me, and a pure example of a Lama who possesses all 10 qualities that we find in the Mahayana Sutra Alankara by Lord Maitreya. By meeting with a perfect teacher like this, I've been so inspired that I couldn't imagine giving up my practice. I couldn't imagine not getting up in the morning and trying to transform my mind. And I definitely could have imagined that many, many years ago. And I just want to say thank you to all the holy gurus out there who are teaching the pure Dharma. There are many teachers that are not presenting the Dharma in a way that's accurate. It's unfortunate. We live in degenerate times, but we have to realize that when we meet with the teacher, we need to make sure that they're qualified. We need to make sure that they really know what they're talking about. And the way that we do that is to do our own self-study and to not jump into some teacher's lap and decide that this is my holy guru now because they have a big long name. Make sure that with that big long name they have, as Dalai Lama says, that there's so many teachers out there that are long on name and short on realizations. And that if you look at Lama and, like a Toku and teacher, it doesn't mean that they're synonymous. Just because someone is recognized or has a big long name or is the head of something, it doesn't mean they necessarily know what they're talking about. We need to check. As the Buddha said, we have to cut and rub everything in terms of the Dharma. And we are responsible for doing that. We can't blame, a teacher that we haven't checked for not leading us in the right direction. We have to make sure that they have an unbroken lineage, that they've had teachers themselves who are qualified. We have to make sure that they can really understand those great texts, those 5 great texts, and what they mean, and really understand how you would go about, ending the suffering of the lower realms, how you would go about ending suffering altogether and achieving an abiding nirvana, how you would go about achieving complete Buddhahood, how you would go through the 5 paths of the hearers, the 5 paths of the solitary realizers, the 5 paths of the bodhisattvas that lead to either abiding nirvanas or complete Buddhahood. And what are those distinctions? A teacher should really be able to present this. And the most important thing, be able to present you with the correct view of reality. Because if they're teaching you some sort of view, which is a positive phenomena, which is reifying cyclic existence, making inherent existence a thing that is real, then you're not getting anywhere. You might be learning some things that'll leave some imprints that'll help you later on, and you have an affinity for the Dharma, and you like the way the Buddhas look and stuff like that. And hopefully because of that, we see that I think one of the great students of Buddha was able to connect with Buddha just because he saw an image of a previous Buddha and said, what a wonderful being, and was able to connect and then receive teachings. And then also connect the initial students of Buddha Shakyamuni connected to Buddha Shakyamuni because he gave his flesh to them when they were tiger cubs. We know that story, the Buddha in the previous lives, when he was a bodhisattva giving his flesh. Rinpoche always said, when you hand out bread to the ducks, for instance, that they'll later become your students, or maybe you'll become their student. I'm not sure. The ducks sometimes I think are, I'm not sure who's smarter sometimes. No, we know the ducks are in the animal realm. We're human beings. We're smarter than the ducks right now. Next life, not so sure. So we need to do something about the not so sure part. That's the part. Do you want to continue with this spiritual journey? Do you want to be connected to kind gurus? Do you want to have a shot? Do you want to, at the time of death, not be terrified? And if those things are things that sound appealing, you have to do something about it now, because death will come and nothing can stop it. We don't know when. And the only thing that can help us is Dharma when that happens. It's an inarguable fact. Our money can't help, can't bring it with us. Our friends can't help, can't bring them with us. They don't want to go when we're dying, They don't want to take our place. They would maybe say that, but they really don't want to take our place. This body can't help. This body is what does us in. We have these elements within us that are fighting with each other, fighting to kill us, basically, because they're always not in exact alignment. We have so many causes and conditions that lead to our death, and so few that lead to our life being extended. Maybe some vitamins, as I've said in the past, maybe give you a little bit longer life. But who among us will live to be 120 years old, 30 years old? Has anyone ever lived 130? I don't think so. Well, how many years could you have left if you lived as long as the longest human being that ever lived? What if it happens tonight, as the 7th Dalai Lama says? How can we say we'll be around tonight? We won't die tonight. What a profound text that was, right? That severing ego text. I feel like reading it again, but I won't do that. But I feel like reading it again right now. It was just like I said about Rinpoche's teachings, nectar. As I was saying it and hearing my words, I was just like, this is just such pure Dharma. And imagine in the world of all of these opportunities to hear nonsense, to hear things that are good sound bites, but are really nonsense at the end of the day. To hear something so profound like that really could transform this mind that I have that has so many defilements into the mind of a Buddha. I can't believe we have the knowledge in front of us that can take me from where I am right now with attachment and anger and ignorance and still running at things to make me happy, less, but still running at things to make me happy that really ultimately won't. Still pushing away things, believing that they inherently exist as bad. This is good, so I'm going to run towards that. It inherently exists like that. It sure looks like it does. This is bad, so I'm going to push that away. It inherently exists as bad. It sure looks like it does. And everything around me sure looks like it's inherently existent, even if I don't think it's bad or good. If I don't have some kind of like dysfunctional relationship with it yet, there's a dysfunctional hum going on at all times. It's maybe not as loud as attachment and hatred, but it's there. It's just a feeling of unease that we always have. And we have a way to not have that. We have a way to not only, get rid of this like humongous unease where we run at things and push them away, but we can get rid of that subtle unease that's always just there humming, this ignorance. The seventh Dalai Lama in this poem talks about we're being asleep, the sleep of ignorance. And that's exactly what the Buddha isn't doing. Because we know that Sanjay means awoken from the sleep of ignorance, open, omniscient, awoken, open, Sanjay. We're so fortunate that we have exactly the same tools right in front of us that Buddha Shakyamuni had to get rid of the afflictive obstructions, the obstructions to omniscience. We're not missing anything. Khyentse Geshe Wandak didn't forget to give us some instruction. He gave us them all. If anybody heard the Dalai Lama teaching, we're so fortunate that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is still in our world, still giving teachings. If anybody, the Jataka Tales teaching, the first night, the Chakra Samvara initiations are wonderful. He gave incredible advice and interwove all kinds of teachings within it. But look at that first teaching on the Jataka Tales. He clearly presents the view of emptiness, breaking it down piece by piece by piece. All we have to do is hit click on YouTube. We can hear this. How fortunate are we? We can hear the Buddha of compassion explain emptiness. Who gets to hear that? How many people get to hear that? We were doing, some math when we were looking at, we were doing the diploma course, and we found out there's 1,000 people signed up. That's amazing. I think 700 from Russian. It's being translated into Russian. Wow. There were 400 people on the first class when we were taking it. And we did some math, 8 billion human beings, 400 on the class. It was like 0.000005, I think. That was like, the percentile of folks that we were in. Hearing Geshe Dorje Damdu just expound the most pure Dharma teachings, talking about, Buddha Shakyamuni, and first teaching that life story of Buddha Shakyamuni, the one who transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, and protector. To you, I make prostrations, and showing how that one verse is Buddha Shakyamuni's life story. Wow. And we live in this reality when all of these other beings have no idea how to get rid of fear. We're being taught how to get rid of all of our fears. Imagine what it would be like to not have any fear. I have so many fears. So worried about Lori and the brain tumor, and so worried about, how we're going to be able to do this or that, and worried about the dog who has this big growth on her. I just worry and worry. Imagine having no fear forever, never fear again. Samsara has an end, has no beginning and has an end. Nirvana has a beginning and no end. So amazing. Somebody's calling. Maybe it's Buddha. Oh, we have to, okay, we're still connected. Good. Sorry about that. We're so fortunate. So let's look at some more fortunate stuff to look at. We're in the section on the great scope. We just entered into it, and Lama Tsongkhapa's foundation of all good qualities, source of all my good, as it's translated here. So we're going to just look at the outline, because we should all be able to be familiar with this and know, like, when we're looking at this text, we should be able to see, oh, this is the part where I, find a Lama and know how to serve and them with, speech and actions and so forth, how the teacher is the root of the path. So this is the first category. The second category is how to train your mind once you've taken on a Lama. Third category, a request that you can attain favorable conditions for succeeding on the path and stop all circumstances that might prevent you from doing so. And number 4, a prayer that in all your future lives you'll be taken care of by a teacher and gain the strength to reach the final end of the various levels and paths, to reach that state of Vajradhara, the holder of the diamond. That's what that means, the holder of the diamond, who has this pure diamond body, speech, mind, pristine wisdom, this purity, the final, line from the completion stage into perfection, the 13th level or something like this. that perfect level in the tantric path that this text ends on, that we'll get into a little bit, but not too much. Okay, so first category, the very root of the path, how to take a Lama and serve him or her properly. The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. Category number 2, how to train your mind once you've taken a Lama. And there's a subcategory, there are 2 categories within this. And Pabunka Rinpoche says that the first is kind of like advice to heed, how to take, you have this thing, advice to take the essence of it, this life. So this is under the category of what you do once you found a Lama. And it basically, that category deals with the teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity, and the teachings for beings of great capacity. It's like, this is what you do once you found a teacher. First, you should take the essence of this life, Lama Tsongkhapa says, because you have the 8 leisures. You have a life that isn't leisureless, meaning isn't a life that you can't practice religion from. You can do that at your leisure. You can practice Buddhism at your leisure because you have these 8 leisures that make it possible for you to practice Buddhism. So the first, bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find, ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. We're making a wish now. And in Pabunka Rinpoche's commentary, he says, as we read these, it says, bless me, etc. He's saying that until now, until I got to this stanza, basically, and until right now, I have not been, doing this. I haven't been taking the essence. I've been, kind of not following in a straight line towards Buddhahood, which is how we would take the essence of this life. I've been wasting it. But from right now on, bless me to know the difference. Bless me to know the difference between taking the essence of this life and not taking the essence of this life. I've been a little screwy up till now. Bless me to be unscrewy. So beautiful. Then we get to the actual teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity section. We've gone over the commentary, so I'm not going to give commentary. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I have died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then to be ever careful, to stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. I'm going to read it out of the prayer book. It's easier for me. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seeming. So now we get into the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity. Those teachings that show us how to achieve an abiding nirvana, how to achieve a cessation of suffering for ourselves, the Hinayana vehicle, as it is called, because the scope, your thought is just to become liberated for yourself, just to have an individual nirvana and abide there. It's called a lesser vehicle because the thought, the scope is lesser, and Mahayana is called the great vehicle because your purpose is to become a Buddha for the sake of everyone, not just yourself. So you can see why one would be smaller than the other. It's just the facts. The wording is correct. Sometimes we don't like the wording because it seems lesser. Lesser. But when you look at your aims, if you're in this vehicle, that's this individual liberation vehicle, it's just for you. There's this selfishness still there. You have compassion and love and all of that, but it's just like, oh man, I wish they'd have that, but I can't really do anything about it. I'm not capable. So I can really only take care of my own needs at the end of the day. But the Mahayana says, I want to take care of your needs and my needs. I want to fulfill all of your needs and all of my needs. What a bigger, greater kind of thought. But still, the thought to get out of cyclic existence day and night, what a holy thought. So it's not to say, oh, we should put that down. It's to say, let's put it in perspective. That's an incredibly holy thought that how many sentient beings will ever even have a thought like this? Who will truly get renunciation? How many, really? Could I in this life get renunciation? To day and night seek transcendent liberation, as Lama Tsongkhapa says? So we have to put these names in perspective, but not be afraid to tell the truth and understand them, because we don't want to fall from our intention to be great vehicle practitioners. We don't want to fall from our intention to become Buddhas. And Buddha nature and becoming Buddhas isn't something that we would speak about in an individual liberation vehicle. It would just be for us. We'd have compassion and wish sentient beings that didn't have suffering, wish they'd be, and we'd go help them too. It's not saying we wouldn't go help them, but we wouldn't be trying to ultimately help them. We would just say, oh, they have this suffering too. I feel bad for them. Let me go help them. But it wouldn't be putting their needs before our own, because that's the only way to bliss. Very different. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of Buddha's teachings. Okay, so now we get into the teachings for beings of great capacity. This is where we landed last week. We taught the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. 7-point cause and effect instructions we went over. And we'll talk about some other stuff tonight in relation to that. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, everyone my own mother, has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. So here we have aspiring bodhicitta. So we know in Panchen Sanandrapas, general meaning of perfection, the section on bodhicitta that we went over in so many classes, that's divided into basis, cause, nature, divisions, and benefits. We know it's divided into those 5 categories. And when we look at the beginning of bodhicitta, when we look at basis and we look at the mental basis and physical basis, what we first learn is that there are 2 kinds of this bodhicitta. There's aspiring bodhicitta and engaged bodhicitta. Aspiring bodhicitta occurs when we, from renunciation, decide that we want to fulfill all of our needs. And if we still have obstructions to omniscience, we don't fulfill all our needs. We can't have bliss. And then we also recognize that in order for us to fulfill all our needs, we have to fulfill all sentient beings' needs. We have to put others' needs before our own. And when we day and night decide that we want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, independence upon a practice, such as the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, passed down from Lord Maitreya to Master Asanga, or the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice, passed down from Manjushri to Nagarjuna, and beings like we read in Shantideva's text, the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice. In reliance upon those two lineages, separately or combined, we will achieve that mind that aspires to enlightenment, that aspiring bodhicitta. So the next stanza gets into the engaged bodhicitta. The wish itself's not enough. So it gets into, we're not going to talk about that as much tonight. But what I'd like to talk about is how we would go about combining these practices. But before I do that, I want to read what Pabunka Rinpoche says. I was reading it earlier, and I think it's really beautiful, just as is. And let's see. Yeah, I'm just going to read the whole section. Why not? Okay. Developing the wish for enlightenment. This brings us to the third and final part of the advices on how to take the essence of this life, how lastly to train one's mind in the steps of the path for persons of greater spiritual capacity. So the teachings for beings of great capacity, as I said. Here, there are two divisions. The first is how to develop the wish for enlightenment, and it's presented in the single verse of the root text which follows. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, everyone my own mother, has fallen into. Grant me then to practice this highest wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. We find in the Abhisama Alamkara the definition of bodhicitta. It's a desire for perfect enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings, for all sentient beings. Wanting to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings in a rough way. So it says now, the sutra that Viradatta requested says, were the merit of the wish for enlightenment to take on some kind of physical form, it would fill the reaches of space itself and then spill over further still. So it's just showing how vast this is. The book called The Bodhisattva's Life, too, has lines like the following, Shantideva's text, The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. All the other kinds of virtue are like a bamboo tree. They give their fruits, and then they always die and go away. But the wish for Buddhahood is an evergreen that always gives forth its fruits, and instead of fading, flourishes even more. The great Lord has spoken. Let's see who the great Lord is. I want to see. I like it when the footnotes are on the bottom. It's from the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. I guess if I read the quote, I probably would have known that. But here, Lord Tisha's famed text. Okay. All right. Those great beings who meditate on the method and so upon the various kinds of wisdom achieve then enlightenment with speed, and cannot be done by meditating on no self-nature alone. So we probably have a little bit of a different translation than that, but it's fine. And the Lord Lama says finally, and that should be Tsongkhapa, let's see. Yeah. From the Songs of My Spiritual Life by Lama Tsongkhapa. The wish for enlightenment is a central beam that holds up every path of the way which is supreme. We can see from these and other works that fine qualities of the wish for enlightenment are limitless. From the first moment that you and I decide we are going to try to reach the state of Buddha, this wish for enlightenment is something we can never do without. The minute we reach the state of mind, we win the title of a son or daughter of the Buddha. Even if we have no other admirable qualities at all, we also then enter the ranks of people who live the greater way. If though we lack this great wish, then it doesn't matter how many great virtues we might possess. Abilities like being able to meditate on the ultimate view, where we see that things have no nature of their own, we still won't be able to join the ranks of those on the greater way, much less reach enlightenment, full Buddhahood. And so the wish is vital. In the sections where we trained ourselves in the steps that are shared with practitioners of lesser and medium capacity, we meditated on the suffering of the lower realms and of the entire circle of life, but relative only to ourselves. In this way, we developed the virtue of a healthy disgust for the kind of life we live. Here you then take the same thoughts and transfer them. Sound familiar? We take the understanding of our own suffering and we transfer them. Renunciation is us wishing to get out of cyclic existence. Compassion, as Rinpoche many times said, is turning it towards other sentient beings and wishing that they're out of their 8, 6, and 3 sufferings. I guess if you're out of the 3, you're out of the 8 and 6, but who's counting? Here you take the same thoughts to transfer them. You try to feel them relative to the condition that others are in. Then compassion and the other attitudes will start to grow within you. So if you don't have renunciation, if you don't know your own suffering, if you haven't dreamed of your own problem, as Shantideva says, how would you ever think of others? Really think of others, and not an attached way because you want to help them because you're attached to them, you like them, you love them, only them or only a few of them. You have to be able to see this kind of universal crappiness, if you will. Then compassion and the other attitudes will start to grow within you. Train your mind thus in the proper progression, using either the 7-point cause and effect instruction, or else do the practice called exchanging self with others. Following these methods, as the books on the steps of the path to Buddhahood describe them. So don't make it up. Once you hear the steps, read the commentaries on each of the steps. Get instructions on each of the steps, or from the oral tradition, and also the great texts, the instructions. You must train yourself in all the relevant details. An example would be committing yourself through formal rituals to the wish as a prayer. And so this is the formal rituals of the aspiring bodhicitta vows that Geshe Dorje Damdu gives. That's it. That's what we're talking about. You must train yourself in all the relevant details. An example would be by committing yourself through formal rituals to the wish as a prayer and to the wish as actual action. Once you have reached a point such as finding your first strong feelings of familiarity with your wish. So you go into action once you have this actual wish. The meaning of the root text here then is as follows. I myself have slipped and fallen into the sea of the pain of this suffering life. That is, I have dropped into the ocean of the cycle of births. I cannot even guess how deep it is, nor how far its edges are. The great sea waves of my deeds and the afflictions of my mind, of birth and getting old and death, rage around me. A great host of ruthless creatures living in the water rise up and attack me constantly. These are the 3 sufferings. The suffering of outright pain, the suffering of pleasure that changes, the suffering of simply being alive, the pervasive compounded suffering. They rip at me, they torture me relentlessly, unceasingly. And at the same time, this is happening to every living being. Every one of them in the past has been my own mother, and I'm adding my own brother, my own sister, the dearest people to me, those who took care of me when I was so vulnerable. In the beginningless string of lives I have lived, though, they cared for me and sheltered me with incredible kindness. I must learn to see how all these fellow beings have fallen into, how they have been thrown down into misery by this mass of suffering, and then I must resolve to take upon myself the task of freeing them all. From every pain, from every cause of pain, I must assume that they reach every form of happiness. I will do it myself alone without waiting or depending on anyone else. Beyond everything, I will myself see to it that every one of them climbs to the state of a Buddha. Through the stages, climbing through the staircase. In short, said our Lama, we are asking our Lama for the ability to find fierce feelings of love and compassion states of mind where we can bear not a moment longer to watch our fellow mother beings live so bereft of happiness and so plagued by suffering. We are asking that these feelings inspire us, in us, the highest aspiration, the true and uncontrived wish for enlightenment. And we are asking our Lama for the ability to meditate upon this wish and practice it and make it totally perfect. Right here on this very seat before we stand up again. I love Pabunka Rinpoche. So powerful. Bless me to see that I've not gotten it right. But from now on, from here on out, make it totally perfect right here on this very seat before we stand up again. Oh, I love it. So fortunate that we have these teachings that are so clear, that are presented. We don't have to guess. We don't have to wonder, oh, well, maybe it would be like this, or how would it be like that, or have some partial instruction that doesn't seem to work, and you do it for decades and nothing really happens. We have instructions that I can speak for that do work, that actually transform your mind. I don't have renunciation or bodhicitta or the correct view of emptiness. I haven't seen emptiness. I'm not trying to put out there that I have some special realizations, but my mind is so different than it was 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, my mind was so different than it was 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, my mind was so different than it was 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, my mind was so different than it was 27 or 8 years ago, whatever it is. Not different so much that it's like, wow, I can take a break, but different enough that I don't take a break. And that's the key. So how then? So we have the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice, where we recognize that, what do we have? A few minutes. Okay, so we'll combine them next week. But let's talk about the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice just for one moment, because we talked about the 7-point cause and effect, and we went over it pretty well last week from how we would feel it perspective, how we would actually like have our minds, what it would kind of be like if we had this kind of mind. In the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice, we begin with, it's similar, like the 7-point cause and effect, we have the pre-step of equanimity. The equanimity is a little different because we're looking at friends, enemies, and neutrals and trying to get to a point where we would equally be willing to benefit them. Here, we're looking at it slightly differently. We're recognizing that all beings are equally important as you. So you're starting with you. Oh, I'm important. Like when you're in a class or something and you hear, in my case, Jeffrey, that's me. I'm importance. That's my name. I'm the person, and then I start to think all sentient beings are equally important. All sentient beings want happiness and the causes of happiness, just like me. All sentient beings don't want suffering or the causes of it, just like me. Their pain hurts, their happiness feels good, just like me. How could I say if 1,000 beings were in front of me that they deserved happiness less than me? If somebody were, His Holiness talks about, if there was an alien looking down on the world and I was standing there and there were 1,000 or call it 1,000,000 people standing in front of me, how would the alien say, oh, Jeff's happiness is probably more important than those other 1,000,000 beings? It just doesn't seem like it makes any logical sense. We think it does because we have a self-cherishing attitude. We have this self-grasping ignorance that from which we have a very coarse self-cherishing attitude that says, I disregard your needs. If you're all thirsty and someone comes up and says, oh, I have some water, I say, that's for me. I just disregard the fact that you're all thirsty. because I cherish myself more than others. I don't see you as equally important. I don't see that maybe I could divide up that water. I would just take it all and guzzle it down, even if it was a pitcher, until maybe I was like disgusted by it. And then I'd give you my remnants and think I did something great. A small scrap of food, it says in the Lamrim texts. Here's a small scrap. Here's a morsel. I'm so great. First, let me take care of me, who's the most important. Then anything that's left over that I don't need or want, I'll act like I'm being generous and I'll give it to you. This is an attitude we have to change. It says in the teachings, in the Lamrim, in the Lojong teachings, that these are part of the mind training teachings, where we find the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice, which was considered a whispered tradition that was just whispered from teacher to student. It was a secret tradition. The 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment was the public teaching. And this was a very special secret instruction that was given, because it starts with also emptiness, where we see that when we try to find self and we meditate upon emptiness, we see that we require other for us to say, this is me, this is myself. And for other to identify themselves as self, they require me, who becomes other. There's no inherently existent self or other. These are just labels. These are just mental constructs. These are things that the grasping at I and phenomena is truly established. You know, I see this. Oh, this is me. 100%. This is Jeff. Jeff's not just a label. There's just this inherently existent Jeff. But is Jeff his earth element, water element, fire element, wind element, space element? Is Jeff consciousness only? Jeff seems to be a boy. In this case, I identify myself like that. Consciousness isn't gender. Where's the other? Is the other the earth, your earth element? Does that make you other? Am I saying that's Lori is other over there because other is the earth element? Is the water element? Is the fire element? Is the air element? Space element? Is Lori just the space? She's 98% space or something, they say. I don't even know exactly, but is that Lori just space? Doesn't seem like it. Is Lori just consciousness? No, I see hands. Where's other? So we start to shrink our grasping, that shrinks our self-cherishing a bit. And we start to say, yeah, all right, me thinking that my needs are more important than yours doesn't really make that much sense. It's not as logical as I thought. And if I think, then the next step is saying, oh, is cherishing myself working out? Is the self-cherishing attitude working out? Is this, when I'm selfish, does that usually produce just this flow of happiness? When do I feel the best? When I love someone. When I really, really care so much about someone, there's just butterflies. There's feelings of just such contentment. But we keep lying to ourselves and telling us the self-centered attitude, the self-cherishing attitude that always brings us nothing but some sort of like tight feeling and pain is the one to go with. But the third thing is that the other cherishing attitude is really the one to go with. Those holy beings like Buddha, who came to this world to shine the light of Dharma so that we could have fearlessness and bliss. The Buddha already had it. Buddha had it. But because the Buddha cherished others, we revere the Buddha. We make prostrations. We lay our bodies on the ground because that's a being who cherishes others. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, a being who clearly cherishes others. Khensa Geshe Wandak clearly cherishes others. Geshe Dorje Damdu, Umzala Geshe Aga, who is the busiest human being I've ever known, but will take my call anytime because he cherishes others. And he'll talk to me. He can tell sometimes when I'm really missing Rinpoche, and he'll just chat and he'll stay on and just stay on and smile, and he'll let his battery run out. Really. And I revere those qualities. So I want that. We look at other beings that cherish others and we start to analyze, is the self-cherishing attitude working? No. Who do I want to be like? I want to be like those beings like Jesus Christ and all these other beings who are so wonderful and cherished others and then became jewels of the world. And then it gets into the Tonglen practice, so the giving and taking practice, where we take on suffering and give happiness. We won't go into the meditation. We've gone over that before. Taking on suffering, imagining that the taking on that suffering just extinguishes and burns up our self-cherishing attitude so much that we could actually give away our root virtues and give away our happiness. And then the next step of actually the exchange, putting others' needs before our own, because we've now established that's the most reasonable thing to do. And then we meditate on the great kindness that everyone shows us because of interdependence, just to reinforce it to the point where we say, we land on the extraordinary attitude. I will take on myself the task of bringing all sentient beings to happiness in a place that's free of suffering. And then we land in the same place that we did in the 7-point cause and effect, where we say, I can't do that. I suffer. I have afflictive obstructions. I have obstructions to omniscience. I am certainly not a reliable guide in a complete way. I don't know exactly what you need. I can give a talk on Buddhism about what a Buddha says is the medicine, but I don't know exactly what medicine you need until I'm a reliable guide, until I have perfect wisdom, perfect compassion, perfect love, perfect skillful means, perfect power. Till I have that, I have this handicap. So I must become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And that's the final result of the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice that happens. And you can combine the 7-point cause and effect with the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice. We find it in the Lamrim tradition, in all the Lamrim texts. Not all the Lamrim texts, but we find it in the Lamrim texts. So that's enough. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate all of you. I will, from now on, we'll be reading the prayer I wrote for Rinpoche. And maybe I'm not going to explain it too much. I think you'll get the gist from when you heard it before. But if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, there's no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. The one who enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Okay, so let's do the concluding mandala offering, the Thanksgiving mandala offering. And as you make this mandala offering as a thank you, I'm making it as a thank you to all of the lineage of beings. And you should be thinking like that too. Thank you for the teaching, Jeff. But that teaching is only possible because of, Maitreya, Sangha, Vasubandhu, Dharmakirti, Dignaga, etc. Manjushri, Nagarjuna, Buddha Palita, Aryadeva, etc. Vajradhara, Saraha, Matripa, Tilo, Naro, Milarepa, Marpa, etc. All these holy beings. So fortunate. Goncha Jimmy Wambo and Jami and Sheba and Jelspin Kirta, Lamatson Kapa. We're so fortunate. So that's who we're making this mandala offering to those beings that go from, me and Kensar Geshe Wandak, Geshe Lobsang Gompo. We just see it. We see that lineage. It's so clear. 100% clear lineage. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa, to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I may have made in this teaching, I apologize. It was out of ignorance. And if you heard them, I'm sorry, erase them from your mind. And may all of that mess that might have happened out of a mistake, not on purpose, or maybe it didn't happen. We just, even the subtlest thing that was just slightly wrong. Let's just make sure that's purified by Vajrasattva's mantra and imagining that Vajrasattva, who's inseparable from Khensa Geshe Wandak, as all the yidams are inseparable from Khensa Geshe Wandak, my root teacher, your root teacher, some of you, or whoever your root teacher is, Vajrasattva is inseparable from him or her, the yidam. So imagine that Vajrasattva is, we're having white light rays and nectars that are transforming into ohms, purifying our body, descending into our crown. Red light rays and nectars that are turning into red ahs that are going into our throat and purifying our speech. And blue light rays and nectars that are turning into blue homes that are going into our hearts and purifying our minds. So we'll imagine that as I recite the Vajrasattva mantra. If I had a bell and dorje, it would be better, but I don't. Om benza zata samaya manubalaya benza zata zeno vajista dita me bava zutugaya me bava zubogaya me bava anuragda me bava zavazidi me bracha savakama sucha me kitam triyan kuruhum ha ha ho bhagavan savatata gata benza mame moka benza bava maha samaya sapa ahom ve. May Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings always remain in this world. I thought the funniest thing at the memorial service, I forgot the last line of Lama Tsongkhapa's mantra. Didn't see that happen. Didn't see that coming. I said, I know I just missed something. My brain just went blank. It's so funny when that happens. Mi meze we tuchin genrezi, jime jembe wambo jambe an, dibu male junsi zaweda, kanchin gibi zuchin songaba, lozandra bishala zoa de. May we always in all of our lives be protected by Paul and Lamo, who Khensa Geshe Wandak said was our protector deity, who said had the power to protect us and not to worry. Because we were always being watched over by her compassionate eyes and the extra eye on the donkey. Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Galarajemo Ramo Achadacha Dunjo Rulu Rulu Honjo Hon Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Galarajemo Ramo Achadacha Dunjo Rulu Rulu Honjo Hon Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Galarajemo Ramo Achadacha Dunjo Rulu Rulu Honjo Hon Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Galarajemo Rama Achadacha Dunjo Rulu Rulu Honjo Hon Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Galarajemo Rama Achadacha Dunjo Rulu Rulu Honjo Hon Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Galarajemo Rama Achadacha Dunjo Rulu Rulu Honjo Hon Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Galarajemo Rama Achadacha Dunjo Rulu Rulu Honjo. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Jatsu, may you stay until samsara's end. Angri Rawe Gorwe Shinjandir Vendan Dewa Malu Yongwe Ne Genrezi Wan Tenzin Yatsoi Shabezi De Badu Tenjoji. And then finally, we'll read this prayer called the Complex Yogi Poses as a Simple Monk. And it ends with, so they know who you really are. You'll know when we get to it. Who are you really? A complex yogi who posed as a simple monk, a Buddha. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Khensa Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music, purified by Om Ah Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of three capacities. Now the sound is stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Thank you, everyone. We will see you. We're on Sunday. Yeah, we'll see you on Sunday. Yeah, take care. Good to see all of you. Thanks again. Thanks for the memorial, too. Thank you.